Good afternoon, guys. Chris from Decisive Coaching. Couple of little tips that's been triggered off. The video's been triggered off by so many of my clients over the last few months. I've lost count how many times I've been asked the same question, and that is, Chris, how can I get my kids to do what I want them to do? Okay, seems to be a very common problem because it seems almost every woman client that I have is at some stage, whilst dealing with their other issues, regardless of what they come to see a coach for, is quite often we'll get down to some of the fundamental problems and issues that aggravate us, and that is, my kids just won't comply. They drive me insane in the morning. They're like, I can't get them to go, I can't get them to get out of bed, get themselves ready, do this and everything else, and it can be quite frustrating, can't it? And of course those issues quite often can develop into much more serious issues later on when they become teenagers and young adults, and they don't really want to take responsibility for anything, and it's everybody else's fault. And of course they can quite often then get into using different types of vices, whether it be violence, alcoholism, drug issues, controlling behaviour, playing up at school, getting into trouble with police, etc, etc, etc. Self-harming is one of those as well. Can be a serious problem nowadays. Anyway, how can we kind of stack the odds in favour of our kids not developing problems, quite such serious problems, as they become teenagers and young adults and later on in life? And it's just one tiny little tip that I'm going to give that seems to work when it's put into practice. I'm going to make this video very brief because I know long videos, they tend not to get watched, and this is a serious one that I do think people need to watch, especially if you have young kids. Chances are you already know what you're doing, but for those that are frustrated, those that are angry, there's just one little trick, one tiny little piece of information that you can use and then expand upon that. Okay? And this is how it goes. Let's look at a typical scenario. Is your kid wants something, wants to go somewhere, wants to do something, and quite often, due to past experiences, never really goes to plan, does it? They don't stick to their side of the bargain. Is whatever conditions you attach to that yes, okay, or they come to you and say, can I have, can I go, can I do, and you say yes, but remember what you did before, and and you try and attach all of these conditions, and you make them feel bad and guilty and everything else. Quite often they don't hear none of that. They just want to hear the word yes, and then they're off. And the reason why this happens, it's kind of like it's a form of protective mechanism that's built within us, is that we kind of know that we're not going to comply. We kind of know already that we're not really going to stick to our side of the bargain. We've already planned to fail in a way. This is not the case for everybody, but I'd actually speak from my own personal experience thinking back, is that I kind of just wanted to hear yes, just so that I could get out there and go and do whatever it is that's going to give me some excitement, some adventure or whatever. Okay, so we just hear the word yes and we're off, and then anything else that's said after that, we tend to sort of disregard it and we blank it out and filter it out, because they're the bits that we don't want to be important. And also for when it does go wrong, and we get some form of like punishment by having things taken away from us and this, and we might even get a whack, or whatever consequence it is, we kind of want to blame the parents. We want to make it out to be their fault because, I didn't hear you say that, or no, you didn't say that, etc, etc. So we try and kind of justify around it by blaming. But of course, if we knew what we was doing right in the very beginning, which I never, many parents don't know the answers. We don't get this book, instruction manual, how to best bring up your kids to get them to avoid problems in life. We don't get that. It doesn't come out, it doesn't pop out after the child, does it? But there's some handy little tips that I've learned that I've been able to pass on to so many of my clients, and the feedback that I get is it's really good. And it's just one that I'm going to share that you can expand upon. And that is, so when your kid says, can I do this, can I go there, can I have, you say to them, or you throw back another question, because they've asked you a question, you throw back a question. Because remember, what we usually do is we just want it down on our terms, don't we? We want it on our terms, and that often will be just a no. And the kid's like, oh, why? And then they'll play up, and then they'll kind of kick off, because they can blame you just for saying no. But if we give them an option of two, because we live in a world of duality, don't we? Dualism is that we have left, right, up, down, back, forth, and it works. We have certainty and uncertainty. We have all these dynamics of opposites and equals. It works the same way, is that we have to have two options. And that is that we either have a question, and this question can be, okay, repeat what it is they want back to them. So you want to stay around your friends, and you want to come back at 9 o'clock instead of 8. And they're like, yeah. So you say to them, what needs to happen in order for me to say yes? How does mummy feel in order for her to say yes? How does daddy feel in order for me to say yes? And it gives them the chance to think. Because when we just give them one option, that's no, because of you're so bad and you always cock up and you never stick to this and you always let us down, that's kind of just guilting and shaming them into their what they've done in the past. You're guilting and shaming them. In other words, it's not really kind of creating and maintaining any form of connection and trust. What they need is responsibility. How do we do responsibility? How do we teach them to take responsibility? Is that we ask them what needs to happen in order for me to say yes. And if they say, well, okay, after a bit of thinking and searching every orifice of their brain, is eventually, if you keep persisting that they tell you what needs to happen, how do we need to feel for us to say yes? And it gets them to think for themselves. They may even say, right, okay, well, I need to come back on time. Yeah? And you say, yeah, that would work if you can come back on time. So that's really cool. Brilliant. So what happens if you don't? Can we make a deal? So for us to say yes, that you can go to your friends and you are going to come back at 9, right? And they say, yeah. Okay. What happens if it doesn't work out? Just in case it doesn't, because you never know. If you don't come back on time, we take your games machine away from you for 3 days. How's that sound? Oh, that ain't fair. Well, based on that response, you know that they're not going to come back on time. Yeah, your gut feeling kind of tells you, doesn't it? Of course, we want to trust them, don't we? We want to trust them. We want to keep giving them these chances and chances and chances, and we keep getting aggravated because it never works out. So we don't really get pissed off with them. We get pissed off with ourselves, and it's our own inability to be able to communicate right in the first place the boundaries, the consequences, the punishments, if they don't stick to their side of the story. Because then it's a real transaction, isn't it? I do know of people that actually will literally write it down and get them to sign. Nothing wrong with that either. But if we leave it down to them and they keep letting you down and they feel like they're letting themselves down, it's teaching them not to take responsibility of how other people think and feel and the consequences of how other people are affected by our actions. So they will go through life later on as they go into their teens and into their adulthood, is they will they'll blame sources outside of themselves, people and circumstances outside of themselves, and they will really struggle to take responsibility, quite often because of the shame and the guilt and the destructive criticism that they get after they've let us down. So it doesn't teach them responsibility, the ability to respond in a productive way. And the way that we teach them that is by asking them questions. What needs to happen in order for me to say yes? Okay, brilliant. So if it doesn't work out and you don't come home at that time, it's not a problem, but you will lose your games machine or you're grounded for 3 days. Are you okay with that? And it's said with no sarcasm. It's said with no controlling serious force behind it, you know. So they know that when they don't keep to their side of the deal and they do come home late, you don't criticize them, you don't hit them, you don't whack them, you don't chastise them, you don't do anything else other than what you agreed to, and that is that you lose your games machine or you lose some freedom. You get grounded for 3 days, and that's, you keep it at that, because then they have who to blame. Who do they have to blame after you've given them a choice? That's right, it will be themselves. So they will learn that life doesn't come that easy, and that is that there is consequence for our decisions and our actions, and it won't be mum and dad's fault. That's the point of this, is that we take ourselves, as parents, we take ourselves out of their little book of blame, and we all have a story, don't we? We all have a story in our life. Later on, at my age, at our age, we have a story, and our story is why we can't be happy, why we can't succeed, why we're not able to do certain things. We have a multitude of excuses and justifications for why we can't be successful, happy in relationships, and be productive in business and with money and finances and health, etc. And quite often it will always be down to our own experiences, what we didn't get, what we didn't have, we weren't understood, we weren't taught right, we wasn't. And parents are usually somewhere at the top of the list in that book of blame. So taking yourself out of their book of blame in the early stages, it will it will save you a lot of heartache, and it will save a lot of issues and save a lot of problems, and it will teach your child to be able to take responsibility, which is a huge part, a big massive chunk of the fundamental roots and the cause of many of my clients, many clients out there, everybody else's coaches, many people with issues and problems. Quite often it will be because they really struggle to be able to take responsibility and deal with the consequences themselves for their own actions or their own lack of actions and their own indiscretions. So I hope that helps. Just a quick recap then. You ask them a question, and the question is, what needs to happen for us to say yes and to conform to your request? What is it that you want? Okay, what needs to happen? They make up the new rules around that. Is that okay? I'll do what it is that I'm supposed to do. You say okay, that's great. If you don't, this is going to happen. Are you okay with that? And they say yeah. Can you sign here then, please? And at least when it does go wrong, there's absolutely no way that they can blame you. Hope that helps, guys, and I'll see you on the next video.